because that's our kind of hang place. I also want to congratulate FJ. FJ, you've done a stellar job. Really look forward to working with you. And I'd be off camera too, because I make funny faces, but I've learned how to control them.
No, you haven't.
At Lake Eola, many, many years ago, about 7 years ago, I went to Italy, and I came back with my pictures of all these little towns in Italy, and I went to Thomas Chapman, and I said, why do all these little towns in Italy have these amazing Christmas holiday decorations, and we have a bunch of DJs throwing stuff on bushes, as well as some of our park staff trying to climb ladders and not kill themselves? Why can't we do something special? And ever since then, they have the CRA DDB has adopted Lake Eola by putting that gorgeous tree instead of that dead thing that fell over every single year. We have now a beautiful professional tree. We have gorgeous Christmas lights or holiday lights, and it has become a community celebration for everyone. David, thank you for your investment that I had to beg for, but it has been amazing, and it truly is a community celebration, and it's bringing people downtown to those businesses, which is what we're supposed to do. So thank you. You inherited the passion that I imparted in Thomas, and I just want to say what a special, special time it was, and what a special tree lighting that was, because Lake Eola is stunning. And I also want to thank David Newbar and Frank Boyce for donating their lights from their Clumwood house. It was on the Great American Light Show. They moved. They donated the lights to us, and I'm going to thank staff for helping us out with that. But they actually decorated the Eola house for the first time ever. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm seeing people taking pictures there and everything. So, and we've actually activated that section of the park. So again, thanks for taking my crazy ideas and making them even into a beautiful community celebration. And I also really want to thank David Newbar and Frank Boyce, because they didn't just donate the lights, they actually had to do the decorating themselves, because our contractor wouldn't work with residential lights and this and that, but we made it happen. And I want to thank Jeremiah and all the staff that helped make that happen too, and Sherry Gutch, because again, I come up with a crazy idea, staff helps it happen, make it happen, and it ends up becoming something beautiful. So it really was, if you haven't been to Lake Eola, go. It's just really, really amazing. Also on item B6, I want to thank the Grandmother's Legacy of Love Butterfly Garden. These are the little old ladies that helped us buy that corner of Lake Eola Park. They're going to be really activating that corner. And I also want to recognize the Mayor's Neighborhood Matching Grant, Timucua Arts Foundation. You do so much great work for the community, as well as Kids Fringe and all of the recipients today. I will go to something a little bit more serious, in my opinion. And people have said it's kind of hard to take me seriously because I'm dressed in these in festive attire, but I can be festive and furious. UC is putting forward some new pricing proposals with solar and peak shift. They've moved forward with this unsustainable and unfair plan. They are not compensating solar rooftop customers fairly for their electricity, and they want to put all other customers on peak shift. Let's be clear, this is actually surge pricing, and it's going to impact everyone in the city of Orlando. Today, it's been published that OUC, Orlando Utilities Commission, has been overcharging commercial customers for millions of dollars. Starling Chevrolet and Advent Health and others. This has been happening for over 20 years. Peak shift will allow OUC to adjust pricing like they do their commercial accounts, at their whim. Do we really want to give them license to artificially increase revenue and overcharge everyone else after they've already shown that they can't do it right for their commercial customers? I was concerned as a solar customer about the unfair practice of our monopoly utility not compensating rooftop solar customers for their power. They want to decrease it from the 10 cents per kilowatt hour to 4, reducing it by 60%. Now it's come to light that OUC has been using their power to overcharge customers. In public records, they refer to hiding these overcharges and offering lowball settlements. I understand as a city commissioner, this is a very serious accusation, but it's backed up by public records. It's about time we called out OUC on this. This is a municipal, not-for-profit utility that has a board of directors that is not governed by the Public Service Commission. Even the governor vetoed the unfair net metering bill in the legislature 2 years ago, and the public does not support doing away with net metering. I hate to say this, and I never thought I'd ever hear myself say this, but perhaps it's time to have more for OUC. I never thought I'd say that. I hate preemption of local authority, but I also hold OUC accountable for their actions. They can't dismiss the concerns of community leaders and buy off residents with free lunches and fancy PowerPoint presentations. Solar energy should be a right in the Sunshine State, and power companies should not be able to make power bills so complicated that people can't understand what they are consuming or paying for. This council stopped price gouging by sellers of gasoline by the airport because they weren't putting their proper prices up. They weren't making it fair, and they weren't letting people know what they were doing. We should be as vigilant of OUC and their business practices. OUC says that customers can opt out of peak shift. Have you tried to access OUC customer service lately? So many complaints I refer through my office are because OUC has automated their customer service line, and regular people cannot get through to make a reasonable complaint. And I see a lot of folks out here nodding their heads in compliance. I have to refer these to OUC through my office. They've become insular, insolent, and unresponsive to their customers. They'll vote tomorrow at 2 p.m. at OUC. Many residents think they're protected by the Public Service Commission. You are not. Please make your voice heard and go to OUC tomorrow and vote and have them vote against this unfair proposal. That's all.
Commissioner, sometimes when you don't have all the information, you make assumptions. And OUC, I'm not going to debate on this, but I think they'll lay out the case that they are the ones that found they were overbilling. They let the board know more than a year ago about that and corrected that. There's only secondly the utility that the state took over, and you know what they did first week? Did away with net metering, Gainesville. So if that's what you want, that would probably be what you get. Okay, let's move on to motion. Motion on the consent agenda. Usually you can do it, Commissioner Sheehan.
Second. Moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. All in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? And so the motion carries. Okay, that means everybody that was here for the consent agenda, you just got what you wanted, and you are free to go, and we'll take 30 seconds to let you quietly exit the chamber.
That's it?
Yeah, it's up to you. It's up to you. But you're fine. For ARV, yeah, you don't have any. Huh? It's already, the ARV got approved, so you're good.
Okay, let's recess without objection to the city council meeting and convene the CRA. Let's see, I think I can do number 1, which is meeting minutes from the CR meeting of October 7th. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Sheehan. All in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. David, I think I'm going to let you handle the rest of that.
So the first one for discussion is an amendment to an amended agreement for the Beacon. So the Beacon, as you will recall, is an important development that's in our creative village area. Previously, there have been conference funding for No? Sounds like it now. Okay. There we go. I'll keep rolling, but if you need me to repeat anything, 2 rounds of local preference funding, each for $610,000, because the development was being built with 2 phases to total 115 new affordable units. What's happened since the last funding project is that it was previously anticipated to get 2 rounds of 9% tax credits and having $610,000 offered to each of those. The second one was not successful. That is now a 4% tax credit project. So the agreement before you allows the previous $610,000 that was attached to that to remain as a CRA investment in the project. And I'm happy to address any questions.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Number 3.
So item 3, this is an amendment, well, it's Amendment 1 to the International Fringe Festival Agreement that we have. So you will recall that the Fringe operate in our art space located in 54 West. We had an agreement with them to provide $307,000 of annual funding towards assisting smaller nonprofits in accessing the space and also putting together various performances in that space in a professional manner. They have ultimately determined that operating in that space is not something they seek to do long-term. So this amendment shortens that agreement to 2 months, and then as well shortens the amount or decreases the amount of money to that pro rata component, which is just over $50,000 to keep Fringe in the space through February of 2025. And I'm happy to address any questions.
Second.
Who had that? Commissioner Rose or Sheehan? Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Number 4.
A DTO restaurant program funding agreement with 2MMLA LLC. So the name that you'll see walking around downtown is actually Tika Bowls and Tacos. They are coming right here to the CBD off Orange Avenue, right next to Dunkin' Donuts, if you know that space. They've signed a 5-year lease and are focusing on a unique fusion of Indian and Mexican cuisine. So excited to have them join our repertoire of restaurants in downtown Orlando. They're going to be open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and the owner there brings over 18 years of experience. Based on their investment, they qualify for $54,025 of CRA assistance. That's $20,425 in tenant improvements and $33,000 first year's rental abatement. And I'm happy to address any questions.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Stewart. Discussion, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. Number 5, this is another DTO restaurant program funding agreement, this one with Central Boulevard LLC. The name of this business is Evergreen Juice Bar. So they're coming into our Eola area, 415 East Central Boulevard. So that's kind of just on the south side of Lake Eola for the space. And they aim to bring healthy alternatives to the area by offering fresh juice, smoothies, and acai bowls and gourmet toast. So can't wait to try it when they ultimately open. They as well will be open 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and bring 5 years of experience to this individual location. Based on their program, they qualify for $100,000 of assistance from the CRA. That's $75,000 for tenant improvements and $25,000 towards the first year's rental abatement.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Number 6.
Thank you, Mayor. And not to be outdone, our retail program has an applicant as well. So this is a funding agreement between 4S Orlando LLC. The name of this business is Sola Salon. So they're actually coming in to Novel, which is south of us here, just south of the 408. The Planet Fitness is there that you can kind of place. They're moving into the location right next to that, 733 Main Lane. They signed a 10-year lease for almost 8,000 square feet of space. What they're looking to do there is bring opportunities for much smaller entrepreneurs to operate inside their space to be able to start their own businesses and hopefully be very successful. They will be open 7 days a week as well, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They're spending approximately $700,000 on their build-out, and through our program, they qualify for $100,000 of CRA assistance. That's $75,000 in tenant improvements and $25,000 in rent abatement.
Is there a motion?
Second. Motion. Sorry, I thought.
Motion by Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Rose. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, and so the motion carries. Number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. Number 7 is an amendment to our facade program. So our facade program has been working very well in late years. Some of you may remember in Project DTO, the 2015 component, there was a large section of that really looking to enhance downtown Orlando's skyline, making it more recognizable and just beautify it. So the amendment that we're proposing is to add skyline lighting for high-rise buildings in downtown, high-rise being defined as buildings that are 10 stories or more. So if a building in downtown that meets that criteria did want to enhance their lighting, we're recommending that they be eligible for up to $100,000 $100,000 in assistance at a 50-50 match, and we would require them to keep that lighting functional for a minimum of 5 years with this amendment.
Moved.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. Discussion, Commissioner Rose.
I just want to make a comment. This is for those in the audience that it takes time, and everything has a time and a place. This has been something when I was a city staff member we worked on, and we talked about it during ARB. So those in the audience, it takes time, but keep pushing for the projects and items and things that you see it will improve the quality of life here in the city of Orlando.
Further discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, number 8.
Thank you, Mayor. So number 8 is an amendment to our restaurant program. This is specifically to add an additional category of restaurants that would be eligible for incentives here in the CRA. It would be food halls. They are currently not included in the program, but we do think they are another component of adding more food options into downtown Orlando. Ultimately, the amendment allows them to qualify for up to $400,000 in funding. That would be the same amount as a full-service restaurant would be eligible for under our current program. They would have to meet a minimum size. They'd have to have at least 7 separate food and vendor spaces as well, and have 5 years of experience in that industry. In addition, we're looking to remove kind of the safety net component that we have in the program, which was a kind of a base incentive of $75,000 towards tenant improvement, because our program utilizes both a square footage component to really move that of the CRA's investment along with the size of the space, as well as with the owner of the property or the landlord's investment in the tenant space as well.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, so the motion carries. Number 9.
Thank you, Mayor. So number 9, this is an amendment to our retail program. So kind of just as we did with the restaurant program, this is to add another category of businesses to our retail program, specifically recreational businesses. So you can think of things like gyms or climbing studios or things that look to keep people healthy and active. These are not in the current retail program, but they operate in the same types of spaces. We also think they add to the diversity of businesses that we are looking to expand in downtown Orlando. So in addition to adding them to the program, they will be eligible for the same amount that a current retail business would. And they would also look to, or we would also look to remove what I also just referenced as kind of the catch-all, that $75,000 component that was included in this program as well, to have the program reflect the size as well as the owner's investment in future incentives.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, and so the motion carries. And number 10.
All right, home stretch. So item 10, Mayor, is in a budget amendment number 1 for this year. The CRA has been fortunate to have a significant amount of funds that have accrued over interest, and we need to place those in various project accounts. Before you is an amendment that places those funds in 4 different project accounts under I, design and implementation, project DTO placemaking, downtown lighting, as well as community policing. Additionally, there's some cleanup items so we can work with our Public Works new system known as eBuilder to move previously approved funds into just new line items so those projects can complete their ultimate construction projects as intended. Happy to address any questions.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, so the motion carries. Okay, David, anything else to come before the CRA DDB?
That is all, Mayor.
All right, then we will stand adjourned as the CRA. We will reconvene the city council meeting. And Madam Clerk, let's go to hearings, ordinances, second reading, number 1.
Ordinance number 2024-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 City Code by creating Article 4 School Speed Zone Infractions, Section 5.23 City Code School Speed Zone Enforcement Cameras, which authorizes a school speed zone speed enforcement program and use of speed detection systems, providing program implementation requirements, designation of school zones and enforcement, providing legislative findings, severability, codification, correction of scrivener's errors, and an effective date.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan. I'm going to take yours as a second, Commissioner Ortiz. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we've had one presentation on this, but Tanya Wilder, our Director of Transportation, wanted to do a little bit more of an update today. Tanya, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. We are here before you today to present the next steps for the school speed zone enforcement program. There it is. We presented in June first reading the statute that the Florida legislature passed in 23, that allows us to implement the school speed zone enforcement program. The statute allows the speed detection systems to enforce violations in excess of 10 miles per hour over the speed limit in effect at the time of the violation. And that is 30 minutes before, after the start of the regularly scheduled school session, during the entirety of the school session, and 30 minutes after. Local governments must provide an annual report to the governing bodies on this particular program, and so our hope is to provide an annual report on both the red light cameras and the school enforcement program at the same time going forward. Proven effectiveness. Here's a case study that we found. It was by the Federal Highway Administration. New York City had installed cameras within school zones in the 2010 era. And what it showed over a 4-year study from 2014 to 2018 is a 63% decrease in speed, 15% decrease in crashes, 17% reduction in injuries, and 55% reduction in fatalities. So the results, what does that say? It says over the course of several years, the number of overall violations dropped by 60%. So where are we today? In June, we presented to council and first read, and this ordinance passed. Since that time, we had Kimley Horn conduct a study, and Harrison Porter is here today to talk further about the findings of the studies of the schools. And we have existing school within the existing reduced speed zones. So here before you today are these findings and the schedule going forward. So we are at second reading. If this should pass, we would move forward on an RFP for proposals for a speed detection system vendor. And then in the spring, we would come back to the council with our rankings of the RFP. This summer, we would plan on doing permitting and construction, as well as at the same time outreach. And then in August, our plan is to have the public awareness period. According to state statute, it's a 30-day warning period. We can extend that if we would like. And then after this opportunity, we will go into phase 2. So what does that mean? So school speed zone expansion. We would hope to kick off the study in 2025. We'll evaluate the remaining public schools to determine if a reduced speed school zone is needed, and which would include such factors as crash data, speed data, site visits, and school travel modes. And then following the study, our department will develop an implementation strategy for the recommended school zones. But that depends on cost estimates, signing and marketing plans, as well as contractor availability. So the cost varies based upon each school zone, but may be on average about $200,000. Next is Harrison Porter to talk about the phase 1 speed study results. And I am here for any questions after his presentation.
Hi. Thank you, Tanya. My name is Harrison Porter with Kimley Horn, an engineer working on this project. We conducted a speed study for the phase 1. Those are the existing school zones in the city of Orlando, and the purpose of that study was to determine which schools qualify for the installation of automated enforcement devices. So, per the statute, automated enforcement devices can only be installed where there is a heightened safety risk. So our first task of this study was to define what is a heightened safety risk. We started with a literature review to quantify the risks of excessive speed. So 3 documents that we identified. The World Health Organization said that for every 1% increase in average speed, that produces a 4% increase in the fatal crash risk and a 3% increase in the serious crash risk. Additionally, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, in their special investigation report said that the effective speed is especially critical for pedestrians involved in motor vehicle crashes. Risk of severe crash injury is only 10% at 16 miles an hour, and that increases up to 50% at 31 miles an hour. And lastly, this is the most important one, the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, NCHRP, published the report 855, which identified that 20 miles an hour is considered the survivability speed for pedestrians and bicyclists in the event of a collision with a motor vehicle. These publications establish that speed and safety are linked, especially for pedestrians, and school children are among the most vulnerable of these users. So, based on the totality of this literature review, we've identified that there is a heightened safety risk when the following two criteria are met. The school zone is signed with flashers that indicate when a reduced speed limit is in effect, and data indicates that more than 50% of drivers exceed the school zone speed limit during the arrival and dismissal periods when the school zone is active. These two criteria are important. The first criteria, based on the signed school zones, those school zones, as Tanya mentioned, have to be established through an engineering study, which looks at number of crossings, speed of vehicles, crash history, and traffic control devices. So those school zones have already established that there's a safety risk to establish the reduced speed. The second piece about data being more than 50% of drivers exceeding the school zone speed limit, that's when each school zone is signed at either 15 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour. When you have a majority of drivers exceeding that speed limit, they're approaching and exceeding that 20 mile an hour survivability speed as defined by the NCHRP. That creates the heightened risk. A situation where a majority of drivers are in compliance with the speed limit indicates that traffic control devices are working as intended. So now on to our data collection. We studied all schools with established school zones in the city. The only exception was Lake Highland Preparatory School, which had a closure on Highland Avenue due to utilities construction, so there wasn't an ability to get representative data for that school. The speed data was collected at each school on both a Tuesday and Thursday in the month of October while school was in session. Want to be clear here, I know Hurricane Milton came through in October. We did not collect data while school was out for Hurricane Milton. It was only on days when school was in session. And then we excluded Wednesdays from the analysis because that's the early dismissal day. So that early dismissal time, we didn't want that to affect the results. So it was Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's in line with the city procedures for conducting speed studies. This graph on the right here is an example of our data sheets. This is Sunblaze Elementary in the northbound direction. We have a separate data sheet for both northbound and southbound, so there's a separate data sheet for each direction. These data sheets are attached in the supporting documentation for the ordinance. The speed data was reported starting in a 0 to 10 mile an hour increment and then 5 mile an hour increments beyond that, and then was aggregated and summarized for each school zone in each direction. The times when the arrival and the dismissal periods are in effect, when the school zone is flashing, are highlighted in orange on that data sheet, and then the data is summarized at the bottom. Additionally, these data sheets also summarize an inventory of existing traffic control devices, including speed limit signs, other warning signs, and speed humps or speed tables. This chart shows the results of our analysis. I know it's a lot of information on one slide, but the main takeaway from this chart is that the green is percent within the speed limit. That's percent in compliance of the speed limit. Yellow is between 0 and 9 miles an hour over the speed limit, and red is in excess of 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. Majority of schools, actually a significant amount of schools, have a majority of traffic traveling over the speed limit, as indicated by the yellow bars being the largest sections of these graphs. And there are several schools where over 25% of drivers are exceeding the speed limit by 10 miles an hour. So our full findings are summarized in a supporting document to the ordinance. Nearly all schools were found to have a heightened safety risk. The only school that did not qualify as a heightened safety risk was Eccleston Elementary due to the presence of speed bumps, and there's also a sharp curve in the road just north of the school, so that naturally slows drivers down just based on the roadway conditions. The average school zone has 37% of drivers in compliance with the speed limit, 45% of drivers between 1 to 9 miles an hour over the speed limit, and 18% of drivers greater than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. Our recommendation is that a school zone where a majority of drivers are traveling above the posted speed limit presents a heightened safety risk to pedestrians and bicyclists, especially vulnerable users such as school children. This indicates a greater potential for serious injuries and fatalities when drivers approach and exceed that NCHRP identified survivability speed. So our ultimate recommendation was that automated enforcement cameras should be installed at school zones in the city when there's a heightened safety risk, which is established by the two criteria I read out earlier. And just for clarity, the school zone is signed with flashers that indicate when a reduced speed limit is in effect, and data indicates that more than 50% of drivers exceed the school zone speed limit during the arrival and dismissal periods when the school zone is active. This is a list of schools that qualify for automated enforcement based on that criteria. The list of schools reflects the recently updated data in the memo, and the new data has been attached to the agenda item. 2 schools have been excluded since the first read. As I mentioned, Eccleston, because it did not qualify, having a majority of drivers over the speed limit, and then Lake Highland Preparatory School, since that data could not be evaluated due to the road closure. And just to be clear, only school zones where these two criteria are satisfied will be enforcement devices. For example, Audubon Park School has a school zone on both Corinne Drive and Falcon Drive. The school zone on Corinne Drive does qualify for automated enforcement devices, but the school zone on Falcon Drive was not found to qualify for automated enforcement devices. So that school zone on Falcon Drive would be excluded. We thank you for your time and consideration, and Tanya and I are available for any questions.
Okay, the board is lit up. We have Commissioner Burns and Commissioner Sheehan, then Commissioner Stewart, then Commissioner Rose, and Commissioner Gray.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And Tanya, I have a couple of questions. Now, are the school zones limited to public schools?
Yes, that's what we looked at, correct.
Okay, so all public schools. And so when we're talking about the phase 2, and I know we've had some discussion about this, and it's my understanding that the city currently bears all the financial responsibility of establishing the school zones that then allows for the speed
Yes.
detection. And with the fines that are collected, I understand that the OCPS gets a portion of those fines. And I would like us to start to have some discussions with OCPS to see if we could get them to commit at least that portion of the fines that they get to the establishment of new school zones. Because I think they should be with establishing these school zones, because they're all and so I think that this may be an opportunity for us to get OCPS to financially participate in the establishment of these new school zones. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Sheehan?
Thank you, Mayor. Tanya, my concern is that the school zones are kind of closer to the school, but we've got some crossings that are a little bit further away. But some of them do have the flashers. Are they considered zones if they have flashers? Because I'm concerned about the arterials like Primrose, Crystal Lake, those, because, you know, as I've seen with Lake Como School, it doesn't seem to be as bad closer to the school as it does on, you know, where kids have to cross at some of the busier arterials. Now, if it's flashing, does that mean we can put them on or not, or do we have to extend it to do the crossings as well?
I'm going to let Harrison answer this question. It's more
All right.
engineering.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is just where there are flashers. There's where they're by the flasher on one end and the end school zone side on the other. I know there are other crossings that are signed with the school zone signage, but those would not qualify for automated enforcement devices per the Florida statute.
The lobby, because I think they might have inadvertently left that out, because we've, you know, now that we've had the larger schools that are being built, we don't have the smaller community schools in the neighborhoods. We have the bigger schools. Kids are walking farther and they're crossing arterials. And I think they addressed this issue, but they may not have, and so might need to do some lobbying at the legislative level to try to get it not just the zones, because Bumby gets a little rock and roll by Lake Como, and we have some issues there, but the much larger problem is at Crystal Lake, where kids are crossing over Crystal Lake. So, and we actually had a hard time finding a crossing guard there too.
Okay.
So, like I say, that's my concern, to make sure that, and there's a flasher there, but it's not the zone.
Right.
So I do think we need to do it. I'm all in favor of this 100%, but I think we might need to look to extending them, because when, you know, and I was at that crossing because we didn't have enough crossing guards, and they put an officer, because I wasn't trained, whatever. It's better to have me out there than nobody. But that officer was pulling these people over one after another. I would say that he couldn't pull them over fast enough. They were all speeding. So we had kids going across arterials where everybody is speeding, and they were over 30 miles an hour, which could kill a kid. So these are things we need to look at, expanding not just to zones, but to crossings, especially at arterials. Thanks, Mayor, that's all I had.
Commissioner Stewart?
Thank you, Mayor. Tanya, let me, a couple of quick questions. So, the enforcement side is not just during school posted times. The enforcement allows us to enforce when the school is in session, even though the lights aren't flashing.
Correct,
Is that correct?
correct.
So I didn't look at the ones that outside of what you highlighted, but I can imagine that on Princeton and on Maury Road and some others that we have a pretty high level of people avoiding
Violations.
violations,
That are
yeah.
speeding.
Yes.
Yes.
So that needs to be kind of notified, I guess, probably to the general public. They think because it's school zone, they think it's only when the school zone is up, and it's not. It's when school's in session and a higher threshold or a lower threshold when the school lights are on, from that standpoint.
Correct.
So a little bit a challenge. So I'm going back and look at some of those numbers from that standpoint.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of pivot from you and go to our attorney and ask a question, because this bothers me a whole great deal. Jody, this entire process has now codified a school zone of a school in the ordinance, which means if we don't do any more, or we do more, it would require 2 readings for every location that we have, because it would be a modification of the ordinance. I'm going to ask this, and I hope you don't get offended. Why in the world would we do it that way? Why wouldn't we just decide that school zones would be determined and that we would have those school zones to report and approved by the city council under the consent agenda or something to that effect? Why do we codify the names of the schools inside the ordinance?
Well, Commissioner, I think the first reason we're doing it this way is because the statute requires a finding by, an ordinance and a finding by council that each of the schools that we put a camera in that school zone, each of the schools has to be approved. But I think you raise a good point about whether we could configure this so that council would decide when future schools come in under that. But and I just pulled up to see whether council action once they've passed the ordinance can be done by let's see. County amended determine Yeah, I think we could look at some kind of drafting that way, and I think that's a good point. So let us take a look at that for once we do the future studies and are ready to add schools, if we can do that with.
I am not opposed to us doing a proper finding, not opposed to all the things that are there. What concerns me is that any modification to this, which is an addition or subtraction of a school, now requires an ordinance to come forward. That ordinance requires 2 readings. Having the city council approved under a consent agenda, I would say candidly, on an annual basis of these are the ones we're going to do the following year, and these are the studies that support it, and thank you very much. I think that is where the core of the state is going. I don't know anybody else in the state that has codified the actual schools inside their own ordinance.
For the Attorney General to clarify that for us, and then we can see if we can do it in a process that would only require 1 reading.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to streamline it but still make it public. That's the core of what I'm trying to get to. And I know you've got to have a bona fide school zone, but the question now is, are we now going to have to approve by ordinance a bona fide school zone, or is that done by policy through transportation? Is it done, I mean, all of a sudden you begin to have this rippling effect, and somebody who gets a traffic citation and in some time in the future may have grounds to say, wait a second, this wasn't properly approved because you changed the school system or you changed this. Yeah, and I'm just trying to make sure that we're tying up all those loose ends as this moves forward.
Yeah, the question is when you're adding new schools, and the council has to decide that there's a heightened safety, problem at that school, whether we can do that with one reading or two.
Yeah, well, without saying a different way, the question is, why are the schools listed at all?
So I think council has to act.
Well, council.
Certainly.
Council can act, and I'm not trying to argue with it, but council can act on the schools without having it be codified into an ordinance. And I have the same issue with with our family parks and recreation. We codify all of those in here when we should be able to handle those as policy, but history has brought us this way, and I'm just trying to make sure what we do is streamlined.
Well, I guess the statute says a county or municipality may enact an ordinance in order to authorize the placement or installation of a speed detection system on a roadway, maintained as a school zone, and then it goes on to find the findings. The cautious reading of that is it requires an ordinance identifying each placement. I think that your question is legitimate, and let us up with the Attorney General and see if we can do it in a more expeditious fashion for the future.
I'm trying to allow flexibility that doesn't require once a month or once every 4 or 5 weeks. A decision to make now moves literally 2 months or 6 weeks into this process, and that just slows this process down when all we're trying to do is a maximum amount we can to protect children. So, all right, thank you very much.
Commissioner Rose.
Tanya, I know when we got the original, there were several other D5 schools, including OCPS ACE. Is that going to be part of the next phase of this? Because I only see Rock Lake currently in this, in the recommended schools.
Yes, and so for our phase 2, we do have that included as far as to establish a school zone.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. Tanya, you may have answered this for me before, I apologize. How many school zones, we've selected 21, but how many school zones are there in the city of Orlando?
46.
46, okay. So we've selected,
Forgive me. So we currently have what we've shared with you, which is 21. We want to go to phase 2 that we've identified to do a school speed zone. We have 46 total schools within the city of Orlando. This number that we are presenting to you today are the established school zones, except for Eccleston and Lake Highland.
so roughly half in phase 1, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess here's my concern. Like all the other commissioners, I don't have any issues with what we're doing in phase 1. Here's what I'm concerned about. The statute says we have to determine what's a heightened safety risk. Harrison, is that defined by the state? It just, what I'm reading, it just says by our analysis. And here's where I'm going with, not so it's a big loaded question. My fear is we're going to win the objective argument of what's a heightened safety risk, but I'm going to have a hard time convincing a parent who lives in my district that their school, right, where we know the average by our own numbers, 20% of the drivers exceed the school speed. I'm going to have, hey, I'm sorry you're not getting this in your school zone because you're not a heightened safety risk. I think we're going to lose that argument. And so I'm trying to see if we can avoid that. And so I guess first step, how do we define the heightened safety risk? Is that our definition or is that the statute definition?
Yeah, that's a great question. The statute does not define what a heightened safety risk is. That's where we established the 50% of drivers over the speed limit being the objective criteria you could evaluate all schools by.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I guess back to Tanya. Tanya, maybe a suggestion as we go out with this RFP. If we're going to do 20 and the average cost for these vendors that we select, whether it's a vendor or vendors, is around $200,000. So that's a $4 million ticket to do 20 school zones. 200,000 times 20. If we can double that, whether that's one vendor, 2 vendors, or 3, why would we not kind of be prepared at least to accelerate phase 2 pretty fast? Because I think phase 2 is going to be on to us really quick once we start doing phase 1. So can we talk about that, or is that not appropriate?
I think it's definitely appropriate to talk about, but that would be costs that we would pay for, the $200,000 to establish the school zones. That would fall within the transportation department in our engineering team.
Okay.
And then we would go out with an RFP for those 25 schools that we then established. We would do a study, we would, just the same as we did for phase one.
Okay. I understand the whole concept of heightened safety risk, and I get the data. I'm just convinced my phone's going to ring the very next day when somebody's going to say, Jim, why does the neighboring school have the heightened safety risk? Do you not care about my kids? And I think we better be prepared to answer that because it's going to come fast, I think.
Yeah, Mayor, let me interject real quickly. The state has particular requirements for a speed zone. We only had 23 that matched those requirements. We have another 23 or 24 that don't match those requirements. And so therefore, the second phase is to study and put them in the requirement so that we can give them speed zones. So while there is a reduced speed area around a school, that's the state's criteria for a school zone, am I correct?
Yes, yes.
Exactly?
Yes, you did a wonderful job.
I was
it's-
confused then, thank you.
Yeah, so I think that the answer is that yes, we want you there. We have to make you an approved state zone so we can give you these.
Got it.
We
Okay.
can't
I was
do it
confused.
outside of that. So that's the
Good.
reason
All
why
right.
there's a difference between the two.
Good, thank you. I was confused there. Thank you.
Commissioner, my guess is you're going to be getting the calls from the people that got the tickets, especially the ones that got them during the day when the lights aren't flashing and they don't understand it.
They always
get a
call until
ticket.
you say, shall I send you a copy of the picture? And then they stop and they go, no, just save the picture. I don't need to see it."
call you.
Yeah, we have the evidence.
I'm sorry, thank
Yeah, but again, I would just close with this. As we're going through the process, whether we select a vendor or vendors, obviously, we want to make sure they're experienced and well-capitalized so that they can live up to their share of the bargain. So, thank you. We've talked about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Ortiz, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I just thank Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Gray for the questions you brought up because they're questions I had. I want to also remind everybody this is a evolving process. This is the first phase, so I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, or eventually, every school is going to have this system because it's necessary. I wish we had installed this back when we first started with the red light cameras because it's so much needed. But I want to take this opportunity to thank our transportation team. Tanya, what you guys are doing over there is amazing. Your study, you guys been on it since day one, and we've been working on this with the legislature in Tallahassee for years to make sure that this comes to fruition, and I'm glad to see it come to fruition finally. I just hope that we implement this system in every school. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheehan.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question. So if it's a 15-mile-per-hour school zone while the lights are flashing, now you're saying it's 15 miles per hour, 24 hours?
No.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah, so with it flashing, it's 15 miles per hour.
Right.
So if you're going 10 miles over that speed limit, you're going to
Right.
get violation. And then it stops, the flashing stops, and it goes to the regular speed.
Regular speed limit.
Which is 25 miles per hour, let's say, on Corinne Drive. And so if someone's speeding at 35 miles per hour, then they will get an infraction.
Oh, they're getting a fraction because they're speeding above the posted speed.
Correct.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, got it.
During school hours.
Yes, during school hours.
Okay.
Okay, let's see, did we have a motion at the beginning?
That's only during school hours, so,
Yes, sir.
okay, all right.
So in the morning and in the afternoon, when it's flashing, that's when it's 15 miles per hour. They're going 10 miles per hour over, then they will get a ticket. But then during the school time frame, let's say school starts at 8 to 3, when it's not flashing, it's the posted speed limit. And if they're going 10 miles per hour, they still are in violation.
That's going to help us on Kareem.
Yeah. That was on Princeton.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, did we have a motion at the beginning?
We did, Mayor.
Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion indicates so by, discussion. I don't have anybody lit up here. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks.
Okay, Madam Clerk, number 2.
Ordinance number 2024-43, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, amending the city's adopted growth management plan to change the future land use map designation from approximately 15.84 acres of land generally located north of West Washington Street, south of Rock Lake, east of North Tampa Avenue, and west of Kent Avenue, from residential low intensity in part and mixed use corridor medium intensity in part to residential medium intensity on the city's official future land use maps, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's errors, and an effective date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Stewart. Okay, I don't have any request for public testimony. I also want to point out that we did not have any request for public testimony during the last ordinance as well. Okay, Commissioner Rose?
I had one request. Corey, I've sent the email to Lucy. The residents are requesting the opportunity for the lake there to be public access to the lake. So if you guys can coordinate with the property owner, Freddie Clayton, to see if that's a possibility. I just wanted to make sure that you all are aware. Thank you.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Number 3.
Ordinance number 2024-51, an ordinance of the City of Orlando granting Lady Waste Corp. a non-exclusive franchise to provide roll-off container collection and disposal of solid waste within the City of Orlando, outlining franchisees' duties and providing the terms and conditions under which such franchise shall operate, providing for severability and an effective date.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. I don't have any cards to speak on this matter. I'll getting a few more roll-off containers again. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Number 4, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 2024-53, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, amending the Orlando Union Rescue Mission Plan Development Zoning District, providing an amended development plan and amended land development regulations for the plan development, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's error, permit disclaimer, and an effective date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Burns. I don't have any request to speak on this item. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, Madam Clerk, let's move to ordinances on first reading. Number 1.
Ordinance number 2024-55, an ordinance granting a petition of Orlando SED Partners LLC, establishing and naming the Orlando SED Community Development District pursuant to Chapter 190 Florida statutes, describing the external boundaries, the functions and the powers of the district, designating 5 persons to serve as the initial members of the district's Board of Supervisors, providing a severability clause, and an effective date.
Motion by Commissioner Rose, second by Commissioner Sheehan. I do have a request on this one. Sam Chambers. So if you'll state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Samuel Chambers. I live at 3333 Pelham Road, Orlando, Florida 32803. On this item, I want to make it clear that I do not necessarily agree with the development of this area, Westcourt, rather just this proposed ordinance. I'm sure all of you on this board are familiar with the Community Development District and what a CDD is, so I won't go into much detail about that. I will first say I do not think this CDD complies with the Florida statutes, as this CDD would not meet the land size requirement. Most CDDs are tens, hundreds, upwards to 1,000 acres. This one, I can count on my hands, 8. This is not my main concern, though. I worry a yes vote today will benefit business at the expense of everyday Orlandoans. The 5-member board for CDDs are often elected by the property owners of the district. The 5 members who will fill this role all live at the same off-site address of 189 South Orange Avenue, floor 17. Now, either they must be so poor that they have to room together due to the unaffordable costs of living in the city of Orlando, or they simply work at the same corporation. Unusual, but developers normally fill these positions early on in a CDD's life. But as more people move into the development and buy property, the new residents too can have a say over how the CDD operates. Not for Westcourt. The proposed development you all voted on, except Commissioner Rose, whose seat was vacant at the time of the approval, denying the people of District 5 a say in this, includes hotels for businesses, office spaces, and apartments for rent. The people who will live here will never own any property, meaning they'll never have any say over how that CDD operates. For in perpetuity, developers and corporations will not just be the only constituent of the CDD, but also the only people elected to it. This will only serve the interests of the corporate owners, likely at the expense of the residents there. This CDD will abdicate authority from government beholden to the voters to government beholden to the developers. In addition to the $42.5 million you gave these developers, a yes vote today would create government of, by, and for the corporations, not the people of District 5 who have to live with and deal with the decisions of these businesses. I encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Okay, that was the only request I had. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. And number 2, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 2024-56, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, amending the city's growth management plan, designating certain land generally located north of Lake Fairview, east of North Orange Blossom Trail, south of Lee Road, and west of Edgewater Drive, residential medium intensity in part, and conservation resource protection in part, designating the property as residential medium intensity with the Wekiva Overlay District in part, and conservation in part with the Wekiva and Resource Protection Overlay Districts on the city's official zoning maps, providing for amendment of the city's official future land use and zoning maps, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's errors, permit disclaimer, and an effective date.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Stewart. Who was the second? Second by Commissioner Rose. I do not have any requests to speak on this matter. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And so the motion carries. Okay, Ed, can you get us prepped for general appearance?